How do you turn your photos from this to this? A beautiful blurry background is what many photographers are dreaming of. But if you're still uncertain of how to get there, then this video is just for you. Fun fact, it's more than just the aperture and buying a $3,000 f1.2 lens. In this video, I will be using wildlife photos as an example, but these tips can be used across all kinds of genres of photography too. The first and the most obvious is the sensor size. To get a more blurry background, you'll need a camera with a larger sensor. There is a reason that those full-frame cameras will produce a much more blurry background compared to your phone. It's simply a case of bigger is better in this example. Of course, full-frame is not the final goal. There's also medium format and large format cameras out there, which each one producing more blurry backgrounds. But every time you upgrade your camera to a larger sensor size, the price generally goes up as well, and after a while this becomes unsustainable. So, are there any other ways to create that effect? That will be your lens, or more specifically the aperture value of your lens. For those newer to photography, aperture determines the amount of light that a lens allows to pass through. So these are generally denoted in f-stops, for instance f1.8, f2.8, f4, f5.6, and so on. And the smaller that number, which also translates to a larger aperture, the more blurry that background is going to look. So if I'm using a lens that is shooting at f1.8 versus a lens that is shooting at f5.6, assuming all things are remaining constant, the lens that is shooting at f1.8 will produce a more blurry background. And in my case, for wildlife photography, this may not be very sustainable as well. For instance, a 400mm f2.8 lens is going to cost 10 times as much as an f5.6 lens. So is there another way to get this look on a budget? Fortunately, there is more to it than just the aperture value and the sensor size. The other factor is focal length. The longer your focal length, the more blurry your background will be. Assuming we want to take a photo of a bird and we want that bird to fill the frame. Now, I can get that shot with a 100mm lens, but alternatively, what I could do is to take many steps backwards and get that exact same shot with a 500mm lens, also getting the bird to fill the frame. And that second shot will allow for a much more blurry background. It's something that you can try even with your phone. So if you do have the telephoto option in your phone, you can try taking a photo with the telephoto lens compared to the regular lens, and you would note that if you keep your subject the same size in the frame, the telephoto lens is going to produce that bit more background blur. Another factor that is often overlooked is the distance from your subject to the background. So in my case, in wildlife photography, I've seen many photographers who are all too happy to just stand from where they are shooting without a care for their background. They end up with a cluttered background in their frame simply because the background is just not far enough from the subject. By moving yourself, or if you're able to move your subject to a spot where the background is as far away from the subject as possible, you can create what's known as a clean background, otherwise known as creating depth. It may not even matter what your aperture value is. I've shot birds at f8 or f11, but with a far enough background, the background just gets blurred into oblivion. The last and final factor is the distance from your camera to your subject. You see, the closer you place yourself to the subject, the more the background will blur. Those of you who have ever done any kind of macro photography would have a very good idea of this. If you're trying to take a photo of a flower or an insect and you're going so close to it, sometimes f2.8 and f5.6 just will not cut it. You'll need something like f11 or f16, or even have to resort to focus stacking. As you get closer and closer to your subject, this also means that the subject will appear larger and larger in your frame, which also thins out the depth of field. Go ahead and try this with your phone. Place your phone as close as possible to a subject that you want to photograph, and with a far enough background, you can actually watch that background go blur. So you can see that this effect is still achievable on a phone with a camera that has such a small sensor. So you can see that even with budget equipment, there are still many ways to produce that beautiful blurry background. It's not just one of these factors that plays a pivotal role. It's how you maximize using all of these factors together. So when you go out shooting next time, think about what is and isn't within your control. For sure, you may not always be able to control the size of your camera sensor, but you can make deliberate choices in, for instance, controlling your aperture value, making sure your subject is as close as possible to your lens, making sure that there's enough separation from your subject to the background, as well as trying out different focal lengths.